Good morning, people. If you're watching this live, thank you for tuning in. If you are watching this after the fact, thank you also for tuning in. Today, we get to talk about some of my favorite things, which include things like plot, settings, and themes. Now, I think for a lot of writers, these tend to be the favorite things about writing, because this is like the meat of your story, really. Like, this is where, I don't know, this is where you get to describe your characters and what they go through, and this is where you get to think of like a creative world that all of this takes place in. And also, if you're the kind of writer who likes to write with themes and messages in mind, then this is also the place where you get to plan all of that out and think about what you want to, I don't know, what kind of message you want to get across. And for myself as a writer, who I really do like to write with themes, and this is one of my favorite parts of the writing process, is just thinking about my themes and thinking about how do I get this message across in my story through things like the plot, through things like the characters, through things like the settings. Now, the very first thing that I want to talk to you about when it comes to plot, setting, and themes is that all of these have to work together. And I guess realistically, I should also add in characters into that also, because your characters have to be, your characters have to be the ones who experience the plot line and who experience the setting and who experience the themes. That is what your readers really want to read about, is like the stories of your characters and how they overcome struggles, or how they maybe don't overcome struggles, and what they learn from that experience, or what they should have learned from the experience. Because again, not all stories have happy endings, and not all stories have not all stories have characters who do the things that we expect them to do. Sometimes characters are very, I don't know, for lack of better terms, stupid, and they do make really bad decisions, and they do really dumb things. And that is still as equally valid a story as the story of someone who makes all of the best decisions, becomes the biggest hero in the world, and saves everyone. So let's jump over to a note document that I have for us. Oh, my note document, it's not showing my monitor. Well, that's inconvenient. Let me mess around with this really quick. Oh, there it is. Okay, for whatever reason, it's kind of glitching out on me, so I'll be right back. I'm gonna have to exit out of the stream really quickly and then restart my program. Alright, I think technical issues have been averted. So I think I got things working again. Things should be working anyways. And I don't want to be on this screen, I want to be over here with my notes. So, on my notes really quick, I've got my iPad right here, so that way I can write down some notes. So when it comes to things like coming up with a strong plot, setting, or theme, you know, I am an amateur writer, so obviously I've never taken like a class on this kind of stuff. This is mostly just from my personal experience, and also from my personal, like the things I've learned through like online tutorials, things that professional authors have recommended in kind of like their workshops and seminars that they post on the internet as well. So take everything I say with a grain of sand, because again, I am not a professional writer yet. I am a teacher of writing, but again, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm like the best writer in the world. I think the first thing that I always like to start with is, so before I ever actually start a story, one of the first things I do is I first like have a dream. And I mean this in both a literal and a metaphorical way. You know, it's literal because usually most of my stories are born from dreams, meaning that I go to sleep one night, I have a dream, a very vivid dream usually, and then I wake up in the morning and think to myself, that would actually make a pretty good story, or that would be a cool part of a story. And so once I have that little like nugget of inspiration in my brain, then I can sometimes go somewhere from there. And I can sometimes flesh out a world around that, or I can flesh out a character from, like a character mold from that dream that I have. It doesn't always happen, but oftentimes it happens. And I can definitely tell you that this story I'm working on right now, this short story, is based on a real dream that I had. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of so attached to it, is because I want to see it go from dream to reality in its own way. So, very first thing is you need to have some, I would say you need to have some sort of like inspiring factor. Oops. Oh, my iPad doesn't want to. Oh, my iPad's being weird. Huh. It just like doesn't want to write for me today. Geez, so many technical issues. It was literally working like 3 seconds ago. Here, I'm just gonna unplug this and plug it back in and see what happens. Alright, iPad. I guess you just don't want to work right now. It's fine. That's a choice you can make, I guess. Not a choice that makes me happy, but I guess that's a choice that you can make. Well, I'm not even sure how to go about fixing this now. Oh, the joys of... Let's try this. We're just going to open up this app again, and we're going to do it that way. Oh, and of course it now doesn't want to capture my iPad screen now that I got it to work. Wonderful. I love technology. Well, we will make do without this then. And I'll just talk through some of my ideas and do my notes on the other screen. So let's take a look at my pre-writing. So in my pre-writing, there's already a spot for places, a spot for characters. I have a basic summary of the story. And usually when I do a pre-writing also, I usually also have some sort of like theme kind of thing. So let's create we'll add a new text in this section for themes. Oops, that's in all caps. So we'll have a new section in this text for themes. And so when it comes to themes, I mean, based off, if I were to go based off of this prequel, in fact, I'm gonna move, can I move this? Yes. Oops, I moved the wrong thing into there. There it is, themes. So if I were to, a theme statement, remember, you always want your theme statement to be a sentence, essentially. It can't just be a word, it can't just be love, like that's not a theme. And it can't be like a super simple sentence. Like, for example, love is blind. Oops. Love is blind. I don't really know if that would be a super impactful theme. And hold on a second, I have to move my camera down because it is in the way. So love is blind. I don't really know if that is a super impactful theme that we can have in our story. It's pretty cliche. I don't think it really necessarily captures a ton. This could maybe be an umbrella theme that we have smaller themes within, but it itself, I don't think it can be a strong theme for capturing what we want to portray. Now, instead of just trying to come up with a theme like from nothing, I always recommend the character method for coming up with a theme. So for example, we have Avery Robinson, who is one of our main characters. And I want you to think about, what truth does Avery know at the beginning of the story? And there are these three kind of like steps that you can think about. And this is a very simplified version of it. So of course, if you have a more complex story, there may be multiple truths that your character knows. Now, a truth simply put, a truth is like when, it's just like a fact of life, essentially, like a universal fact of life that your character might know. So for example, a truth that I know about life right now during the quarantine is that people should be mindful of how their actions have consequences that affect not only themselves but also others. So that's like a truth that I have learned from the quarantine. And through the process of the quarantine, this truth might be challenged or this truth might be reaffirmed. And that is the kind of like the how they get there. So again, I have my truth at the beginning of a story or beginning of an experience, and then I have my truth at the end. Now, these truths might end up being the same. However, there's still going to be a process of how this character has their truth challenged or has their truth reaffirmed. Remember, it's either challenged or reaffirmed. Again, this is all very stripped down. Obviously, more complex stories have a much more complex structure than this. However, for some of you amateur writers out there trying to incorporate themes into your stories, this is a really good way to do that, actually. And so a truth that Avery knows at the beginning of this story is that Avery questions, or I guess the truth is, So this is a truth that Avery knows at the beginning of this little like short story that I'm writing. So romance isn't for everyone, and the pursuit of romance is dangerous. I'm gonna change that to can be. I don't want to have a definitive kind of thing in there. And so a truth at the end of the story is, let's say, even though romance might not be for everyone, and the pursuit can cause unintentional damage to individuals involved, cool. So this truth at the end is, even though romance might not be for everyone and the pursuit can cause unintentional damage to individuals involved, romance shouldn't be the sole definer of one's life. So now in this, I'm capturing this idea. I'm still capturing actually like the main truth. So Avery still hasn't given up that truth, that Avery still definitely believes that romance isn't for everyone, and Avery also believes that the pursuit of romance can be dangerous. Like, that is not something that has gone away by the end of the story. However, what has been added to Avery's life is, or what has been added to Avery's truth in this story, is that romance shouldn't be the sole definer of one's life. Basically meaning romance shouldn't be like I don't know how to put it. And again, like, it's okay if you don't exactly know how to word your theme right away, because as your story goes on, you'll find multiple ways to actually put your theme. You'll find multiple ways that your theme will come out. So I'm just going to leave that for how it is for right now, because I don't want to spend too much time playing with the wording or trying to explain what I mean. Again, this is just like, all of this is always subject to change. And as a matter of fact, most stories actually have multiple truths that a character has to learn or a character has to experience throughout the story. So it wouldn't even be that surprising if I come back at a later day and I add more truths to this to make a more complex story. How they get there. So basically how their truth is either challenged or reaffirmed. Well, one of the big ways that Avery's truth about, well, how Avery's initial truth is challenged is that Avery starts to develop feelings for someone. And not only that, but the feelings are most likely mutual. Now, in this short story, I make it pretty ambiguous as to whether or not these characters are like super into each other, or if it's just kind of like a will they, won't they kind of thing, because they don't actually like... I mean, the point of this story is to explore the messiness of a potential relationship between them. It's not necessarily to see them get together. Like, that's not really the point of the story. Because in the actual story, they have a pretty complicated, messy relationship as well, due to their life circumstances. So Avery starts developing feelings for Matthew, and the feelings are likely mutual. The pressure of time hangs over them because Avery is only there for the summer. So there is that kind of like pressing feeling of like, we have to figure this out or we have to just let it go, because like we're only here together for this one summer. So like, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We don't know what is going to be our truth at this time. Let's see, other things that maybe help Avery to get there. I guess Avery realizes that it's okay to focus on a career and also have romance on the side. Because throughout most of the story, Avery is pretty like romance centric, or sorry, he's opposite of that. He's very career centric. Oh, another big truth over here for Avery at the beginning of the story is that Avery doesn't believe that he is worthy of romantic love. So basically, Avery doesn't he definitely has some self-confidence issues, and so he doesn't think, so the reason why he puts up so many walls when it comes to romance is actually because he doesn't think that he deserves romance. And that's kind of a silly idea to think, because everyone, if they want romance or need romance in their life, deserves romance. There isn't a criteria list to if you deserve romance or not. So that is something that Avery also has to learn. So how they get there. So through their seemingly mutual attraction, Matthew teaches Avery that Avery does have a lot to offer, not only romantic relationships, but also friendships. And this is going to be a pretty big thing that comes up later on, because Matthew is going to say a lot of things to Avery, things like, wow, you're actually really good at talking to people, you're really good at helping people through things, you're a really good listener, you're really good at providing support in a way that doesn't seem overbearing. And that is actually going to help Avery to realize what he wants to do with his life, which is actually go into music therapy. So this kind of stuff actually matters a lot, not only in the short story, but also in the longer story as well. Okay, so I think I'm pretty happy with how Avery Robinson is for right now. Let's move on to the other main character in the story, Matthew Rhodes. So his truth at the beginning, so Matthew, spoiler alert, is still closeted for most of the story, and he never actually comes out in this entire story, because that's not what this story is about. The story is about the process of him building the confidence and building the self-compassion to be able to admit that to himself. And so that's really what the story is about for Matthew anyways. It's not his process of coming out, it's not the act of coming out for him, it's the process of eventually coming out, even if it happens not on the page. So the truth that he has at the beginning of the story, truth at the beginning, truth at the end, how they get there. So Matthew comes from a very religious family where sexuality is it's just basically not okay to be gay or transgender or any sort of LGBTQ plus identity other than straight or cis. And so the truth that Matthew knows at the beginning is that he knows at the beginning is that the attraction he feels towards Avery is wrong and invalid. That sounds super depressing. I don't think anyone's attraction should ever be wrong or invalid. Even if a relationship doesn't come out of it, I think if you're attracted to someone, you're attracted to someone, and that's just You know, that's just the truth of life, is that we have attractions, and they're not always going to play out into a full-blown relationship, and that's okay. Other truths. I guess another truth that he knows that he has at the beginning of the story is that there is only one version of love, and there's only one version of love, and anything that falls outside of this is incorrect. I might work on the wording of that later on, but, you know, again, this is drafting, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. So the truth at the end of the story, obviously Avery and Matthew are going to have some sort of mutual attraction towards each other. So this is going to challenge a lot of Matthew's beliefs. And it's that is like the process of how Matthew eventually gets to his truth at the end, is through this kind of like budding relationship. Now, that being said, Matthew does not do a full 180 at the end in the same way that Avery kind of does a 180 at the end up here. No, Matthew's experience is definitely a little more complicated, especially because his family itself just is a little more complicated. I'm just going to drop my camera up there again, so that way it can be just like a little bit more out of the way. So the truth that he has at the end of the story, let's say it is so there's like one truth that he does kind of go 180 on, I'm gonna say. So maybe he does accept that there are other versions of love out there in the world. So maybe he does accept that, you know, LGBTQ plus identities are in fact valid, and those versions of love are in fact valid. But perhaps his attraction towards Avery is still wrong and invalid. So again, that is still kind of, that he still hangs on to that from his initial truth. He has not just done a 180 and said like, I am done with, you know, I'm done with the straight life. I am going to embrace the LGBTQ plus life, and I'm going to love Avery with all my heart. Like, no, he doesn't come to that truth at the end of the story. And it's the ending is actually very bittersweet. It basically ends with, you know, them kind of going their separate ways, and they don't talk to each other again for another like 4 or 5 years until the main story starts happening. And by the time that main story happens, like, Matthew has obviously figured out more about himself, but at this time it just isn't their time, and it's, I don't know, it's like kind of heartbreaking. But it's like, okay, it's bittersweet because you know Matthew's on the way to like figuring himself out, and you know Avery's on his way to figuring himself out. They just are not going to figure themselves out into a relationship together. That's just not what they are going to do by the end of the story. So is it a true romance story? I would say no, because a true romance story, one of the tropes of a romance story, one of the kind of stereotypes of a romance story, is that the characters should have a happily ever after at the end. And if they don't have a happily ever after, then it is not a true romance story. So I would say that this is, again, this is probably not a true romance story. Hold on, I gotta check my phone really quick. I think I just got a text. Nope, it was nothing. I'm good. I am gonna plug my phone in though. It's getting, the percentage is getting kind of low. Coolio. That's charging. Okay. So how they get there, how does Matthew Rhodes eventually get to this? Well, Matthew spends a lot of time with Avery. So Matthew spends a lot of time with Avery and starts to see this being drawn to Avery is more than just platonic. And that maybe there are romantic undertones to it. Avery teaches Matthew about how different the world is outside of their small town. Because again, Avery goes to college at UW-Madison, which is politically and socially a very different place than, say, somewhere like the Dells. And yeah. I guess something that Avery also teaches Matthew is that you can't be conditional with like how you love people. So again, I guess kind of the reason why this comes up is because there is a religious argument, or I guess I shouldn't call it an argument. It's like a religious philosophy that says like you should love the sinner, but like hate the sin. And I mean, you know, depending on what your religion is, I guess it can work for some religions, but I often see it being used in a very like vindictive kind of way, where people will justify their bad actions, their negative and toxic actions towards certain other people, and then just say like, well, it's because it's because I'm vindicating your sin. Like, I love you as a person, but I just hate your sin, and therefore I'm gonna do these awful things to you, but it's okay because I love you as a person. And like, honestly, that's a really cheap argument. Like, if you do something awful to someone, that saying that you love them and that you're doing it out of love doesn't make it better. You're still doing an awful thing to someone. So I never really understood the point of that argument, and that'll be something that I explore throughout this story. So you'll see that now that I have some of my like preliminary truths worked out on this story, or worked out for this story, you'll see that there are certain things like how they get there. Like, that is basically my plot line right there. So basically what I have done is I have started like a point A and a point B, and the character has to experience everything between point A and point B, and that is what the story is. Like, stories at the end of the day are really just about characters, or full worlds even, who have to experience something where they have to learn some sort of truth, or they have their truths challenged. Like, I think that's really the easiest, simplest way I could break down a story. And if you look at storytelling across the world, like this is almost like a universal kind of concept that all stories around the world have, where it's almost all stories around the world have truths, almost all stories around the world have characters, and almost all stories around the world follow this arc of like, there is a truth at the beginning of the story, there's a truth at the end of the story, and the story follows the character as they have their ups and downs to get to the final truth of that story. And so in your own writing, I would challenge you to actually stick to this kind of structure, especially some of you amateur writers out there, such as myself. I am an amateur writer. I am not a professional writer by any means. And this is something that I stick to because I don't think I'm quite good enough a writer where I can break away from this yet. Maybe someday I will be able to, but again, I think I still have to stick to this until I become a better writer. Notice that throughout this, I haven't written a single, one big theme for my story. Instead, each of my characters kind of presents their own theme. And that's one of the very powerful tools that you get to use as a writer, is that you can present multiple themes throughout a story. Now, because Avery Robinson is the narrator of the story, Avery's theme is going to come out the biggest and the strongest, and it's going to be the easiest to see for sure. But also, if someone really relates to Matthew Rhodes, like I know many people do, because there are many LGBT folk who come from very religious families, who come from very small towns where it's maybe not okay to be LGBTQ plus yet. Matthew Rhodes' theme is equally as valid and is also part of that story. And if I wanted, I could write as many character themes as I wanted. So, for example, I could even write one for Brandon Robinson if I wanted. Brandon is the older brother of Avery, and I could have a whole theme for Brandon. Now, in this short story, it wouldn't work because it's Brandon doesn't really play that big of a role. But in the actual main story arc, I might consider writing a full theme, kind of breakdown for Brandon's character, just so that way Brandon has some true character growth and true character development. I have to plug in my laptop really quick. Battery is getting low. Oops. Plug that in. So, again, this is the way that you can get your themes across in a pretty seamless way, and also it's a way to get your themes across in a way that readers will actually understand. If your themes are too ambiguous, or if your themes are wrapped into they're hidden behind too many layers of whether that be storytelling, character, setting, etc., it can get very confusing and very convoluted. Very quickly, actually. And the worst thing that can happen is that a reader gets a theme that is completely wrong from your story. That is not what you want to happen. You want your themes to be clear enough that someone can get them, but also have enough room for interpretation where someone can make some creative choices if they wanted to, and they don't have to necessarily stick to your one theme statement, and they can come up with their own theme statement if they really wanted to. So I'm feeling pretty good about this. Now, the only thing that this method doesn't really get across is the setting. And I'm not gonna lie, I really struggle with setting a lot of times. I often am so lazy when it comes to putting a setting together that I would just create a fake setting and I won't put too much thought into it. Now, this story takes place in the Dells, so I actually have to be pretty realistic with it. And that's where I pull up my friend Google Maps. So here we are in the Madison-Middleton area, because that's where I am right now. So if we were to take a look at Wisconsin Dells, this is the rough breakdown of Wisconsin Dells. Now, my story, I believe, takes place... I think it's somewhere in... Let's see, I'm trying to think about this. Where's the highway coming in? Is this the highway? I'm trying to find the highway that comes all the way from Madison. So this one, up through Baraboo. And this one keeps going. Yep, that's looking correct. Cool, it is this highway right here. Oh, I'm getting like off track now, but I wonder if I could find my parents' cabin from here. Oh gosh, I'm wasting so much time right now just like looking at maps. So this is part of like the fun process of writing, I guess, is that you get to do some of this like looking through and things. Oh, I did find my parents' cabin. Okay, cool. So I like to use Google Maps when I have to do real research, because one of the really cool things that you get to do is like I can drop my little person anywhere on this map. Let's say we drop them like right here. And now I actually get to look at what the Dells actually looks like. And, you know, in my story, I'm probably not going to be describing every single detail of this place. Like this, I could spend like probably, you know, 50 pages just describing what this looks like. I'm not going to, because that would be really boring. But like when you're describing a setting, especially if it's a real place, you have to do research for that. You can't just make something up that is untrue to it. Like if I talked about a random skyscraper in the Dells, that just would not make sense. Look around me. I'm in downtown Dells and there are 0 skyscrapers to be seen. Or if I talk about the Dells and I don't talk about the river, because the Dells is literally on a river and a lake, that just wouldn't make much sense either. So Google Maps is one of your friends. You can like literally virtually walk through. If you want, you could even take like, you could even like check out YouTube videos and things. So if I go down this way, this is kind of like the way to my parents' cabin up in the Dells. And I'm thinking to myself that this is probably, that over here is probably going to be where the main story takes place. I was actually really thinking about, so when I drove past this place for the first time, I actually thought that this spot right here was like the perfect location for where I wanted this to be, because so these are condos. It's not a resort, but I think it could be super easy to like kind of mentally convert this into kind of resort rooms versus just being condos. And I mean, it's a real place that exists. You can see it for real. I would be able to describe this pretty easily. And like, this is like the main lobby area where people check in, and probably also where the family lives. So yeah, so I'm gonna use this to my advantage. Like I want to be able to use this to my advantage and use it for real life purposes or for my story purposes. And so this is gonna be it right here. This is like the resort. You're looking at it. I mean, it might look a little bit, it might sound a little bit different in my story, but basically this is gonna be it. So I have my setting, and if I were to describe how this looks, like, let me just zoom out really quick. Let's go back out of street view. So it would be like right around this area, which is right off of Broadway. And Broadway up in the Dells is kind of like the main street where everything branches off of. It's like, for example, you can see Mount Olympus is over here. That also means that like Noah's Ark is going to be not too far away either. Oh, Noah's Ark is down here. So Wisconsin Dells Parkway is also one of the main streets as well, in addition to Broadway. Something I'm curious, I wonder where the high school is. Oh, wow. The high school is like super close too. So yeah, from there to there, that's about how far it is from the high school. Which is going to matter in the story because they do talk, like, at one point they are in the high school. Oh my gosh, they have a 2.7 review. What are people saying about it? One of the best schools in the world. Ooh, this one looks like a scathing review. The school's administration does not care about the students. Back in my day when my father and even my older brother were at school, they did things to make students' experience better and to make sure they were being taught at a correct pace. Now, however, all they do is ensure that Wisconsin Dells High School is achieving their ideal test scores, and not only that, but they also use the diversity in the school as a trophy, and they push them so hard, again, just so their numbers are good. When I have children, I will never allow them at a school like this. I will make sure that they're being taught in an environment that allows them to work at their own pace, of course with a generous and well-meant push. Not only that, but I will take my child to a school that cares more for their students than their numbers. I like how this person's name is Trashist. It's a nice rural school, not super new, but it isn't run down either. I wonder what let's take a look at their website. And again, I'm not wasting time. I promise that I'm not wasting time. I promise that this is like real, genuine research that I have to do for this story. Oh my gosh, look at the pet band. Wow. Ooh, the library. Oh, that's just their... I don't want to click on that. How do I go to their high school? Oh, this is the high school. Just kidding. How do I look at their academic programs? Course description book. There it is. 2020-2021 course descriptions. Ooh, that looks old. Very aged. Well, I guess it's all scanned in. It's kind of weird that they had to scan this in. Like, you would think that they have a PDF that they originally had to create to print all this stuff. So it's kind of weird that they had to scan more of this in, or scan it in again after creating the PDF and printing it. Cool, so they have some information about planning out your years. These are their required classes. Well, they have an AP Prep English 9. I guess it's kind of like their English 9 honors program. Or an AP Prep Bio or History. That's interesting. Again, that AP Prep English 10. Seven or 8 credits per year. Wow, that's a decent number of AP classes that they offer for being a rural school. That's actually more than what my high school offered, and I went to a not rural school. I went to a suburban school. I mean, my school now my old high school now offers a lot of AP, but $60 minutes of homework per AP course per day. Expected to take the AP exam. Huh. Oh, so they have a TA program. That's pretty cool. I just want to look at their English classes. Whoa, they have a lot of youth apprenticeship programs and classes. That is a lot. That's actually pretty cool though. I do sometimes feel bad that like a lot of suburban and urban schools don't have as many opportunities for apprenticeship classes. Ooh, the art department. So there's 2 intro, drawing and painting, ceramics. Oh, Native American art and culture. That is super cool. That's awesome. I love that. And that makes sense because the Ho-Chunk Reservation is right up there. Sculpture. That's cool. Computer graphics. All right. So pretty basic for art stuff. Computer classes. Microsoft Essentials, Business Math, Entrepreneurship. Oh. So some pretty basic business type classes as well. I'm not seeing anything that is shocking. English, my people. Huh. Yeah, so it looks like it is just a honors type class, but I guess they don't call it honors. English 11. Oh, that's interesting. So they have... Huh, so they have an English 11 and they have a junior lit and comp. This course is designed for students who are career bound after high school. I don't know how I feel about that terminology, because I think a career bound person can definitely still take, you know, literature and composition. But whatever. English 12, again another quote career bound for after high school. Intro to college, reading and skills. Oh, that's the dual Madison credit one. Senior literature. Senior comp. Okay, so it's basically the same as junior lit and comp. It's just 2 semesters. AP Lang and AP Lit. So pretty basic stuff. That'll be the same wherever you go. Ooh, the electives. There's the yearbook publication, public speaking, creative writing. Oh, that's it? Oh my gosh. That's so few, like, elective classes. I want to see, what does their schedule look like? Here it is, the 2019-2020 Bell schedule. Oh, so they have an 8-hour day Bell schedule. Oh no, just kidding. They have a modified schedule. So meaning that like, oops, why is this trying to print? Stop. So meaning that they have different schedules depending on what day it is, which is interesting. So they have an 8-period day on Monday through Wednesday. Thursdays, it looks like they have a 4-period day. Friday is also a 4-period day. So it's a mix between the 8-period and also the block schedule. Oh, and then there's 8th grade schedules. I don't need that. So it's kind of interesting too to look at. Again, this kind of like research that I'm doing is definitely worth it in the end, because the more that I can kind of understand how this part of the world functions, the better I'm going to be at writing about it. I wonder what student life looks like here. Oh god, they have a flexi sketch as well for an ASR type thing, I'm assuming. Curse flexi sketch. community? Would that give me anything? About Wisconsin Dells High School. Oh, their website is... okay, cool. It's currently not working properly. That's fine. Or they just don't have anything up here yet. Student handbook. I'm not that interested in that. I really just wanted to learn more about their community. Ooh, clubs and activities. Let's see what clubs they have. Wait, this is also super empty. What is Odyssey of the Mind? Oh my gosh, that picture. That picture is so blurry. Wow. Creative competition for humans in grades K through 12. Oh, that's kind of cool. So you create like a... You have a issue and then you create a solution for it. That's pretty cool, actually. Why do they only have Odyssey of the Mind and a dodgeball tournament? Well, that didn't happen for sure because we were all canceled school. What's on their calendar? Dang, they just like don't have very many clubs and activities up on their website, I guess. How about their sports? Well, this doesn't really explain to me what kind of sports they offer. You know, their district or their website sure is pretty empty. I wonder what their employment looks like. What kind of jobs do they have? Oh, they're not hiring. Well, they're hiring for bus drivers. That's cool. Oh, I know, they are hiring. Special education teaching assistant. Alrighty. I mean, that makes sense. I imagine that at a place like the Dells, there probably aren't going to be a ton of job vacancies since, you know, people definitely do live up here and work up here. Well, everyone, this has been such a journey to go through. I feel like I have learned a lot about myself and about the Dells and the story that I'm writing right now. I think I'm gonna call it for today. I feel pretty good about where I'm at in terms of like writing down my, where is it? In terms of like writing down some of my themes and some of my important like ideas that I want to come back to later. I have a better idea of the setting as well because I kind of, you know, I did all my Google Mapsing. I did some Googling of some of the places nearby so that way I could write about them. And so yeah, I feel like this is a really good stopping point for today. Oh my gosh, my hair looks, I really need a haircut. Like my bangs just don't know what they're doing anymore. What if I just like, no. I can't do with my bangs just in my face like that. So yeah, let's call it a day. Thank you for tuning in to the stream if you're watching this live, and if you're watching it later, thank you also for watching it. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all later. See ya.